This is Event Masters. Behind the scenes stories, experiences, and lessons shared by the world's leading event experts. Hosted by Christian Napier.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Event Masters. I'm super excited to have our next guest who literally is the best in the world at what she does. It's Christy Nicolay joining us from far away. Christy, how you doing?
Yeah, I'm good. Christian, how are you?
I'm doing really great, and I'm so glad that you've carved out time out of your extremely busy schedule to have a conversation today. But you got to tell me where you're joining us from, because that background, that doesn't look familiar to me.
No, this is I'm in my room, and I'm in Santiago, Chile right now. So we're just about we're about a month away from the Pan and Para-Pan American Games. So getting close, getting excited, and it's winter here, so we have some. You can't see it because it's like, but it's there. I promise. Some beautiful, white-capped mountains, and so here in Chile, where it's chilly.
Wow. Well, I appreciate you joining us all the way from Chile. And before we started recording, you told us that, things are not entirely stable there. There might be a little bit of earth shaking going on.
Yeah, quite a few earthquakes here. I think I've had one every single trip I've been here now. So it's been about, 6 or 7. So, but it's, they're kind of fun. I mean, come on, I'm from California, so it's no big deal. It's all fine.
Well, fingers crossed, stay safe there and warm in the winter months here. It's, in Salt Lake City, where I am right now, it's quite nice. Temperatures in the mid 80s. It's very comfortable. So no complaints. But winter's on the horizon. We got our first snow of the season up in the mountains.
You guys are getting ready, and we're wrapping up here. So
yeah. Yep. All right. Well, when I said you are the best in the world, it's not hyperbole. It's not exaggeration, right? I'm looking at this bio here, which is amazing. Executive produced sport presentation victory ceremonies for more Olympic and Paralympic games than anybody else in the world.
Yeah, I guess that's what happens.
That's a bold claim.
Yeah. Well, I didn't write that, but it is true. So, yeah. My first one was Salt Lake. So, my first games was Sydney. That was with NBC. But my first time executive producing sport presentation was there with you in Salt Lake. So, yeah, a long time ago.
Well, we'll get to the history of this in a minute. But a lot of innovations that we've seen in sport presentation over the last 2+ decades have come from your creative vision. They've come from your brain. And I'm curious, your bio kind of talks about this coming from MTV and then to ESPN and so on and so forth. But maybe you can kind of flesh that out a little bit. How you got involved in this particular industry, the crazy world of major events.
Yeah, sports and entertainment. I didn't really know what I wanted to do when I grew up. I just knew that I loved sports and entertainment and traveling. Like, I'm fascinated, working in different cultures and I'm super bad at all of them, but I love learning new languages. And so somehow I just started doing everything that I loved, and it kind of evolved into like the perfect job, I guess. So I started. I really had done everything else. Like, I was a flight attendant. I was a gymnastics coach. I was a park ranger in San Onofre for San Clemente State Parks, California State Parks. But I ran surf competitions in San Clemente and San Onofre, which is like a really big, surf spot a long time ago. So I kind of learned to run events, and then I was in Hollywood, so I got to see a lot of behind the scenes production stuff. And then it just sort of was like, hey, I want to do this, I want to do that. And I really had done everything else. And then really what happened, I was working at the Ritz-Carlton, so in Laguna Niguel, a long time ago, and I was running the fitness center. And I was back in school. I took some time off, and then I went back to college while I was working at the Ritz, and I took a film class because I thought that it would be like an easy A. And it ended up being kind of a lot of work. It was like writing screenplays and a lot of analogies, but I was also into photography. And then my professor was like, look, you have a really good eye. You write really well. You have a great imagination. But I would write these true stories about like growing up in Oregon with all brothers, and he would go like A+, great imagination. But anyway, so he sort of, I guess, saw the potential and said, you should think about production, like film and production. And so I started taking those courses and finally figured out like which path I wanted to take. And I was living in the French West Indies. I was did a small job for Club Med down there, and I met all these people that worked for MTV, and I thought like, oh, that's what I want to do. And I thought that, okay, I'll finish school and then I'll go to film school, and then I'll get an internship. And so I kind of had this whole path lined up. And then my kind of new friends at MTV like said, hey, we heard you switched your major to TV and film. And I said, yeah, someday I'm going to grow up and be like you guys. And then they said, well, do you want a job? And so that's kind of what happened. So I started at MTV, and that took me to ESPN, and then I got into sports, which I already loved. I already did a lot of sports, and then it just kind of went from there.
So how did you end up finding this niche of sport production or sport presentation, as it might be called, in the victory ceremonies? How did it go from, okay, I'm doing stuff on MTV and I'm doing stuff for X Games and stuff, and now I've created this thing called sport production or sport presentation?
Yeah. So when I was working at MTV, I was very much on I only knew the TV side, the broadcast side, and actually everything I did a lot of shows. I did a couple of films even as an assistant director, and I did a lot of TV. And one of my favorite jobs on the TV broadcast side was I loved being a field producer. I'd worked my way up. I casted talent. I was a supervising producer. I did kind of everything, on the production side. And then somebody that I worked with at MTV said, hey, you love skateboarding and you love surfing, and you should interview for this show called ESPN's X Games, which at the time, this was, early kind of, mid 90s, I guess it was. Like, now I'm dating myself. Anyway, but they, you should, it was in San Diego, X Games. And so I got an interview down there, and I went for an interview that I thought was for a field producer for the broadcast side. And so I went down there and I, got the job, and then they were saying, well, yeah, you're producing for the big screen. I'm like, okay, that was completely new to me. I came from the broadcast side, and I was used to having, my like own crew. You could do take 1, take 2, take 3, like you got a lot of chances. And then of course you could fix anything in editing. But this was, it was sort of, it was live, but even though it was just for the big screen, and all of my TV friends will argue, well, that's for, 10,000 people as opposed to broadcast, which is, 10 million or whatever the numbers are. But I really liked it. I fell in love with it because it was, immediate gratification. Like you could physically, you could see the reaction from the fans that were actually there, and you could really, you could make a difference like in the show, and you could enhance the competition, for the athletes that are there competing, and you can engage the crowd, and it's like, it really was like a whole new world. And so that's kind of happened by accident. I just thought I was going for a TV field producer job, and it was for, well, what we now call sport presentation, but then it was called live event production. So live event production, sport presentation, sport production, day of game presentation, it's all the same thing.
Why don't you describe for those of us who may not know exactly what that is or what that entails, what sport presentation or live production, what that actually is?
Yeah, sure. So if you bought a ticket to a sporting event like the Super Bowl, for instance, or any game, any NHL, NBA, any Olympic Games or Pan American Games, anytime you go to watch a sporting event live, sport presentation is everything that you kind of see and hear in the venue outside of the competition itself. So, if you go to the Super Bowl, it's going to be the halftime show. And of course, the pre-show, we always do at least an hour pre-show leading up, to what we call the zero time, which could be the tip off or kickoff or whatever, however the sport starts. So, so it's all the music and the announce and all of the video content that you see on the video boards, any entertainment, lots of all the elements that kind of surround a sporting event. So that makes sense.
It does. It does make sense. And it can be absolutely amazing. You mentioned, and I have seen this, that a lot of innovations that have come in this space over the last 2+ decades have originated with you. And I'm curious if you can describe what some of those innovations were or are, and what are some of the favorite ones? What are some of the stories behind some of your, favorite innovations that you've seen over the years?
Yeah, I mean, it's getting harder and harder to be innovative. So, on one hand, it's easier because there's like technology that supports it. But on the other hand, some of the technology takes us in a different direction. People looking at their phones rather than looking at the field of play. So it's always kind of a struggle. But I mean, back to the early days, I think I learned so much at MTV that I was able to kind of take what I learned at MTV and then go to ESPN's X Games. And then at the X Games, it really was like we could be as creative as we wanted. And so I think that's really kind of where I learned to not limit myself, and just little things, that are like don't even matter anymore. But back then it was like, hey, let's ask every single athlete what music they want to hear when they drop into the pipe, for skateboarding, for instance, or snowboarding. Or let's do moving athlete headshots so that we can capture the athlete's personality. So one of the first times we did that, we did it at X Games, but then when I was at the Olympic Games in Vancouver, I was able to do things like put a screen, like an extra large, video board at the top of the half pipe for snowboarding. And I didn't want to just do like still photos. I wanted the fans to be able to connect to the athletes. And you can't really do that when they're wearing a helmet and goggles and, you can't see their faces. And so started to think, well, of course, everyone can see a photo of them, but let's capture their personality. So we told the athletes, and one of the first ones was Shaun White, which I'll never forget. And we told the athletes they were coming for a photo shoot, and we wanted a whole bunch of different poses. And then really we were filming. It's like a special camera at the time that looked like a regular camera, but it was, a film camera. And so it was amazing because then the athletes came and we said, give us your serious face. So they'd like, and be like, give us your laughing face. And they, give us your strike a pose model face. And they would, but really we were filming the whole time. So we were really able to show like their personality. And I think the result of that were that fans could see what they were really like when they're, relaxed. And then when you feel like you know an athlete a little bit better, then you become a fan of theirs. And so those are just simple things, but we're always trying to think of something new.
Well, one of the interesting things I think about sport presentation is there are so many opportunities for things to go a little wonky, a little haywire, whether it's because of power, whether it's because someone got delayed in transport, for whatever reason, things can go a little weird. And I'm curious, have you had any experiences? Do you have any stories about, where you had to like off the cuff, we're going to switch to plan B, or we got to do this because something's not working?
Gosh, I mean, yes, for sure. Of course, I'm gonna I'm trying to, let's see. Yeah, definitely we've had things. I mean, something we were just laughing about because we're getting ready for Santiago here, but we're just talking about our mascot so mascots are something that often fall into sport presentation. And just this morning we were talking about how our we had a mascot in, I think it was the Rio 2007 Pan American Games, and the mascot was a giant sun, like giant sun.
Yes.
Do you have one? Don't tell me you have one. Yes,
Coway.
Coway.
This is him, Coway.
You have Coway.
Right,
oh my gosh, that's amazing. And you had it right there. That's amazing. But,
yeah,
wow.
I don't know why it was sitting there. Actually, I do know why it was sitting there. I was going through my office and trying to reorganize some things. My wife was helping me out, and she's like, "Where do you want to put this?" I'm like, "I don't know. Just set it down, and I'll figure out a place." And I haven't figured out the place, so it's just sitting back here.
That is amazing.
It's hilarious that you mentioned Coway.
Okay, so so imagine this. So you know who Coway is. Can you show it again? So it's a giant. The mascot is a giant sun. Okay. And
This dude right here.
Okay. He's a little bit more to scale there, but in the mascot, he's giant, right? Like I don't know if you can tell, it's like this wide. And he's so is it gymnastics, and he's on the the field of play he's on the main mat, and he's like kind of raised up. It's like kind of on a platform, so it's like a foot off the ground, let's say. And he's out there performing, and he cannot kind of only move like this, and then the song was over, and his handler, I don't know where the handler was, but somehow missed him, and instead of stepping on the step, he completely stepped off the stage and went like flat and was like, oh, and couldn't get up because he was, I'm sorry, it was really funny. We were just talking about it this morning, like how important it is to have mascot costumes that are more functional, because he also could never get through a door. He was always, he had to like turn sideways and shimmy. Yeah, but no, I'm sure we've had much worse things happen, and they're going to come to me as soon as we get off this call. I'm going to go.
Well, maybe it was you. It was telling me maybe on the Salt Lake podcast. I can't remember, but one of the challenges with mascots is just coordinating their appearances, right? So that the kids think that, oh, here's the one and only,
right. You think there's only
one of these mascots, and so that they don't appear like, oh, here's the mascot here, and then, oh, there he is over there, like,
right.
So just who thinks of this kind of stuff? It's not something that the normal population thinks about.
Yeah. At the same time, you can't have only one, because they would just be exhausted and stuck. They can't be in the costume for so long. And just again, we were just talking about it. So we have 11 here, so that's good. But yeah. So I don't know. I'm sure I'll think of other things that have happened, but it's, we're always doing these, what happens if the, flags get stolen, and what happens if I had, in the Pan Am Games in Lima 2019, we were doing indoor volleyball, and it was indoors, but there was it was kind of an indoor-outdoor venue, and it had some air kind of ventilation at the top, and fog actually rolled into the venue, and we had to stop an indoor volleyball game due to fog, because the whole venue filled up with fog, and you couldn't see, the players couldn't see each other. So there's all kinds of things happen. You just,
my gosh.
Yeah.
One thing I want to ask you about is, in your career, thinking about Olympic Games or major sport events, there are different ways that you've been engaged. Sometimes it could be as a full-time employee of the organizing committee. Sometimes it could be as an advisor consulting with them. Sometimes it could be contracting with your company to basically outsource a range of services that are being provided, et cetera, et cetera. And so I'm curious to hear from you, what are some of the benefits and challenges associated with these various ways of engaging sport presentation for the organizers?
Yeah, I mean, I've certainly done both ways. Just it really depends on the organizing committee and how they structure. all the different functional areas. Sometimes it's done all in house, and sometimes it's outsourced to a company. Generally for Olympic Games, since I was, doing, yeah, I mean, it's been both ways really, but, like again, I guess I think of 2002 because that's where I think I first met you, but 2002 is, all in house, and I handpicked every single person for sport presentation, and I, built the team there, and it was the same way for Athens. So this is probably a story, but yeah, when I got called for Athens, I got called in November of 2003 by the CEO there, and the games were in July 2004, and when I got there, like nothing had been done. So, and I had to not only hire everybody in house and handpick every single person, but I could only get approval from the board once a month. So I think really had to like be ready for the whole batch of people that were to be hired for games time, but you can only do a certain amount each month. So that was certainly challenging. And then Torino 2006, I mean, they outsourced. I consulted to the outsourcing company, and then I went there for games time. And Rio 2016, we did it in house. I had a Brazilian team, much of the same Brazilian team I had in 2007. Which was amazing. And actually a lot of them are here now. So it's great to still be working with people from so long ago. But yeah, it's on one hand, it's, when you are inside the committee and if you have the time and the support from the other functional areas, it's good to be in-house. And other times, like, when it's not enough time and you can get, a company like ours. So now I work for a company where we do sport presentation, then it's easier because you have the team all lined up and you can kind of come in hot and you're ready to go. So yeah, there's pros and cons to both. And yeah, just depends how the organizing committee decides to structure, really.
Well, in thinking about these organizing committees and these events, as you mentioned, you're in Chile right now. You worked in Brazil, you worked in Athens, you've worked in so many different locations, so many different places.
Russia, don't forget Russia.
Yeah, and that requires learning about understanding how the local culture works. Not only in the organizing committee, but outside of it as well. And sometimes that learning curve can be steeper for some places than it can be for others. And I'm curious, if you have any of those kinds of stories where you came in as like a fish out of water,
Yeah.
coming into this new country, a new location, a new corporate culture,
Yeah.
and you kind of had to feel your way around and figure out how that worked.
Yeah, I mean, it used to be so many times I would be the only woman in the room, working in sports and working in production. That's like kind of was always a fish out of water. But I grew up with all brothers and doing all sports, and so I was never really like, not that it didn't never bothered me for sure, but it was something I actually didn't often notice until later on, and people started asking me about that. And so I was like, oh yeah, it was like that. But certainly, in being in big meetings in Moscow, Russia, like getting ready for the Sochi 2014 Olympic Games, not only the only female, but often, and actually in Greece as well, but also the only American. So it's always, I've tried not to be, too American, I guess, and try not to always try and, being, I think I pay a lot of attention to trying to adapt to whatever culture it is I'm in. Like I try to always be culturally relevant to wherever I am, and not to kind of not force like, well, this is what we do in the US, like I never want to do that. Although, some of the, big sports teams are in the US, or the big, so it's, yeah, it's a balance for sure. But I'm often, I don't know, I'm probably just awkward in general. I'm probably just a fish out of water in general. But I get along, and it's easy, and it's super fun to work in South America, and I love working in Europe as well, and I loved working in even in China, in Pyeongchang. Like I think everywhere you go, I have this motto, like wherever you go, there you are. So you're still you wherever you go. And I think I learn amazing things about people and get new friends that from all over the world that speak, different languages. And I'm not so big on learning about new food. I'm kind of a bland eater, so not so fun to have to try weird things sometimes. But yeah, but it's an amazing job and lifestyle, I guess.
Okay, I have to ask, since you brought the food up, I do have to
Oh,
ask, is there one thing that has been offered to you that you just like, no, I'm not going there?
I thought you were going to talk about s'mores. I was already.
Oh, I'll get to s'mores in a minute, but is there, in all of your travels, is there one thing where you're like,
Oh
you know
yeah,
what, I can't do that one, sorry.
yeah, definitely. That I would have to say that was in China. Getting ready for Beijing. So pre-pandemic, I did go there. I worked the Beijing 2022 Olympic Games. I consulted to I was their advisor. So actually, I think I was like their vice executive producer or something. But anyway, I was working with the Beijing committee leading up to the games, and then during the pandemic, I couldn't get there, obviously. But then I went just for games time, and still got to do those games. But prior to that, yeah, I was going there, I don't know, once a month or something, and they would always have these, fancy dinners. And one time I was having dinner, I think it was like the owners of the Bird's Nest, where the opening and closing ceremonies were. And very fancy dinner, I don't know, maybe 12 of us at a round table at the top of the stadium, overlooking the stadium, and things were just coming out, and they were smoking and on fire, and I don't know. Yeah, I couldn't tell you what it was that I couldn't eat, but I just knew I couldn't eat it, so I didn't eat it. Some things that looked like maybe they weren't quite dead. um you know I'm it's you try not I don't you never want to insult anyone. I'm sure it was a delicacy, and it probably was delicious, but I just couldn't. And yeah, another time in
Well,
Tokyo. Yeah, go ahead.
go ahead.
No, people are gonna think I'm crazy now. Like, what does she eat? She doesn't eat anything. No. One time in Tokyo, another fancy dinner leading up to the Tokyo 2020 games, and it was on the top of a fancy restaurant on the top of like their tallest building, and it was similar. I'm gonna say it was like a benihana where they cook in front of you, but it was just a sushi place, and also where they teppan and they cook in front of you. But yeah, they brought out I had ordered shrimp, and they brought out this plate of shrimp, and just I guess I'm supposed to see if it was fresh or not. So I'm like, oh yeah, okay, it looks fine. And then they took out a little brush and they tickled the bellies, and they all were like, oh, and they were still alive. So I was like, oh no, I can't eat those ones. So I could eat them later. I don't want to see them in front of me. So I don't
You
know.
don't want to witness their demise.
I
Like,
don't want to be the reason, but
yeah,
oh
at risk of Scott Givens getting mad at me, his rule is he always ordered tofu, like if you ever went anywhere, because like, I can't go wrong with the tofu.
yeah,
That's a relatively safe thing. But I do remember my times in Beijing, those big fancy dinners you were talking about with the
yeah.
massive round tables. And one time I got camel feet, the
Oh
like camel. Yeah, I'm like,
yeah.
yeah, that's great. Thank you very much.
I try never to eat anything I could be friends with. So, like, I stick to fish. Tough to have a conversation with a fish, or shrimp. But yeah, yeah.
So I kid and all, but in all seriousness, though, I really, really appreciated the hospitality wherever we went, but particularly in those Asian countries where they really did make an effort to make us feel important and wanted, and they treated us exceptionally well. So I have no complaints. It's fun to talk about camel feet and things like that, but honestly, they were fantastic. I really, really enjoyed my time over there.
Yeah, me as well. Yeah, they're
All
great.
right, well, let's talk about the s'mores, because you brought that up. So tell us about the s'mores, the tradition of the s'mores.
No, it's just I just actually have some here. I brought them, but it's too far over there in the cabinet. I won't. I'll spare you the proof. But no, I just I grew up in Oregon, and we'd always go camping, and I love s'mores, and it's just something that every country I go and work in, it eventually always comes up, and like, you don't know what a s'more is? Okay, I'm gonna bring them, and because you can. They don't always have. We might be. I'm trying to think of where we were, but we were in Doha, for instance, one time. I think at the Arab Games, and it was tough to find a fireplace there. And I think we put them in the microwave, but it's like, what, you guys don't have Hershey bar and graham cracker and marshmallow? This is crazy. So every games I do in every country and culture, we always have s'mores. We also always play rock paper scissors. So it's, I don't know, it's just things that kind of traditions that kind of stick with me, and we just always do it. But yeah.
But how did the s'mores tradition come about? That's what I want to know.
I don't remember. I don't know. Do you know? Did I tell you once before?
You may have. I'll have to go back and listen to the podcast, but I really like that. I forgot.
What?
I don't know if you've ever tried these guys.
No.
They're really good.
Okay, wait. Hold on. I'm going to be right back. Hold on. Hold on.
Wow. Okay, I got to look for those.
I didn't open them yet. My husband bought them for me for this trip. But, just to prove.
Yeah.
Wait. So, there we go. Hey,
yeah,
maybe
well, you're all set. Okay, well, I got mine and you got yours. We're all set.
No, I don't remember why. I think we talked about that before, but it's just a thing.
Well, one of the things I liked about that, though, is it's one of the unique things that you bring that really helps the team bond, and for you, it's absolutely vital that you have a team that works with you that performs at the best of their capabilities. And I'm curious, how you have developed your leadership style and approach over the years, that really, no matter where you go, you're able to get people to deliver their very, very best and really do an excellent job. And so maybe you can give us a little clue on how you've kind of developed your approach over time, and some of the stories that you've seen, leadership, team building, high performing teams when it comes to your area of sport presentation.
One, I think I'm incredibly lucky. I think, I don't know how or why it is. I'm so grateful for the people that do join my team. Like, I'm just every time, we're about to do a workshop and I have to go out and speak to, I don't know, 300 or 400 or 500 of them. And I look around the room, I'm just always in awe of their, they're also like incredibly talented and creative, and they come from all over the world. So here in Santiago, we're going to have 21, right now we have 21 different nationalities on our team. And so every games we go to, like here I keep pointing here because they're in the meeting, like to go to the meeting with them in a little bit. But, I have Brazilians that I worked with in Rio 2007 and Rio 2016. And I have Peruvians, that we worked with in Lima 2019, and Argentinians that did Buenos Aires, this, Youth Olympic Games. And we have, I don't know, like everybody, Mexican, Puerto Rican, like Portugal, Australia, France, Germany. Like there's this, I don't know. I just, I think maybe it comes from when I did work in Hollywood. I used to cast talent. So like one of my team, Liana, just said to me this morning, I was like, we had to replace somebody. And I said, oh, no, this person will fit with this person. And, or when you look at announcers, like this voice, like their voice complements the other voice. But it's really just kind of overall big picture. Like I really look at who can complement each other, or who's really going to bring out the best in that other person. And somehow we just get these like amazing people that love to do what they do, and they love to work together, and they don't just become like colleagues for 17 days. They really become lifelong friends. And then I'm just lucky enough that when I get the next big games and I call them up, they all say yes, and then we're all back together again. And I think that's like just like why we all love it so much. It's like you just you might go 2 years before you see them all again, and I don't know, they're just I'm just always, I can't believe when I call them and they sometimes they drop everything. Like sometimes they have full-time jobs and they're like, okay, I'm gonna leave for 2 months. And I don't, it's just, I'm just lucky.
I think that's probably most of the battle right there. I mean, just because you approach your role with such gratitude and kindness that it can't help but be reflected back, so what a remarkable thing that you've done over all these years. As you look back at the work that you've done so far, are there any particular moments that really stand out for you as, I don't know if they would call them goosebump moments or crowning achievements or whatever, but when something just went beautifully and you're like, wow, I was really fortunate to be part of that?
Yeah, I mean, there definitely have been moments like that. I mean, I think when everything works, like it could be something so simple, but when, the music and announce and the video and the sport and like everything, it's kind of like if things don't go well, not that many people notice. Like I'm the worst person to take to a sport event. Like you don't want to take me to anything because I just sit there and go, I should have done that, and they should. But but most people probably don't notice. But when everything goes like hits just right, it's kind of it's like magic. It's like even just something simple as our victory ceremonies music, for instance. A lot of times, like right now, we're working with our composer here, and a lot of times, you work with the composer, and you can do victory ceremonies music a couple of different ways. You can have 5 different tracks, like a walk-on music, and then a bronze, and then a silver, and a gold, and then a walk-off music. But then it's up to the DJ to make sure that it all kind of syncs together. Or you can compose the music where it kind of naturally builds, and maybe it's going to hit at that moment when the athlete steps up onto the podium and gets their medal, or maybe it's not. Like, but sometimes when everything just works at like the exact second that it should, I kind of get this feeling like, that was magic. So, and you only hope that the athlete, and the spectators felt it too. But no, I don't know. I mean, I've been at a lot of different things. I mean, I know I'm trying to think Olympic Games. Of course, it was always when Shaun White got his, gold medals. I was always there. A lot of most of the stuff that I keep are coming to mind are like things from X Games. Like I was there when Tony Hawk did the first 900 at the San Francisco X Games. I think it was 1999. I was actually on the ramp. I was there when Travis Pastrana did his first double backflip. So that's also an X Games thing. But all those kind of I don't know, a lot of moments. Again, I'm going to think of them as soon as we hang up.
Well, it takes me to another question, which is about the crowds, the spectators, because it can be different in different parts of the world.
Yeah.
One of my favorite, so I'm a big, I like music. I'm a huge fan of the group Rush.
Oh yeah.
And there's a DVD called Rush in Rio,
Okay.
and they are playing Maracana.
Yeah.
And there's like 60,000 people in there, and they are going absolutely nuts for this band. Whereas in the States, I mean, they play, their demographic skews a little bit older.
Yeah.
They're sitting a lot of the time, they get up and applaud, and they're fine, and they're respectful, and they're having a good time. But these folks in Rio were off the chain. I mean, they are just on their feet the entire time. They're jumping around. They're even singing the instrumental parts, or there's no words. They're just singing the instrumentals. And it's just, you can see the band members look at each other like, I can't believe what we're seeing here. And I'm curious, in your experience, what it's been like, because you're delivering things in venue, in a stadium with, thousands of spectators, where you've had, have there been places in the world where you've had crowds that have just been absolutely amazing, and how sport presentation really helped prepare and influence that crowd to really give its all, because the athletes, they can really feed off of that energy that comes from the crowd, right?
Yeah, of course. I mean, Rio, I mean, the fans in Rio were always amazing. Not so easy to get the reactions in, Pyeongchang, for instance. Certainly not Beijing, but also there were no crowds because it was the middle of the pandemic, although there were spectators, but they were kind of isolated and not as packed as usual. But I think, in Latin America, it's really exciting here. I mean, just one of the things we did in Lima, for instance, Lima 2019 Pan American Games, we didn't have a huge budget for entertainment. And we really had to get my team together and go, okay, what can we do here to really, engage them? And one of my producers, the guys happened to be out like at a bar or something, and they heard this song called Caranito. And it's like a very famous song, and it's really fun to dance to. And they said, well, let's like make our own flash mob. So they came up with the choreography, and then we ended up like teaching it to everybody. So we taught it to, security guards and the volunteers and the medical staff. And we were actually having, workshops to teach everyone that worked this dance to this very simple song. And then the result was that every time we played the song in the venue, not only just the workers or our dancers that knew, or the choreographers that knew the choreography, all the fans started to learn it. And I remember like being at the I think it was the volleyball finals, and it was a packed crowd, and we put on that song and sent the dancers out. But not only were the dancers dancing to the song, the entire crowd knew the choreography. And that was something that just, happened kind of organically. And I remember like crying a little bit because I was like, wait, we did this, and we did this out of almost nothing, and it's kind of the little things that stick with me, that you kind of get that moment and you're like, wait, we did that. And, and to add to that, then the team, and I don't remember who the winning team was, but the teams knew the choreography, and they were dancing after they finished their final match and before their medal ceremony. So that was pretty cool. So,
that's awesome. I love that. Well, as you look ahead to the future, you've been involved and in the middle of a lot of innovation in this space. Where do you think it's going from here? It seems like with the technology that's available today, that in some respects the sky's the limit. But at the same time, you talked about challenges of people just looking at these things the whole time and
Yeah.
not actually paying attention to the event. So, what does the future look like for sport presentation?
Yeah, I mean, it's a really good question because, for a while there, during the pandemic, of course, it was going in a completely different direction. I don't know if I had talked to you before or after, but I did like the Basketball Champions League in Athens, Greece in the middle of the pandemic. And they didn't have fans, but we had video boards and LED walls, and we had like virtual fans. So I thought like, oh, it's great for the players to run through a tunnel of video boards and have their fans like cheering, but it's not the same emotion. You don't get the same. I don't think the athletes get the same energy as they do as people physically being there and supporting them and being there and paying attention to the game. So it is. A lot of, like I said, a lot of the new innovation requires people to look at their phones, and that's not what we want. And it's definitely not what, I can tell you, it's not what broadcast wants. They don't want to pan the crowd and have people looking at their phones. So it's always trying to, I think the challenge is always trying to bring the focus back to the field of play. And to me, it seems like I always want to make the athletes, rock stars, and tell the fans, not only educate them more about the sport or how the game is played, or because maybe they might not know that sport. Like maybe they bought a packet of tickets and it came with, I don't know, extra tickets to some other sport. So you always want to be educating them, but I think creating more fans for the athletes is always important. So I think there's a lot of going in to, showcase the athletes. And it's, again, simple things like, athlete entry screens that they walk through, like making a big deal of their introductions, when they come onto the field of play. And it's just, I mean, I think we're going to probably be doing holograms soon. Like with music, you can do that. We almost did it in Vancouver, but it was, I don't know, $500,000 or something to have a hologram of a band. But I mean, there's, I don't know, the technology, like I said, advances, and it's just trying to find a balance. And I don't know which way it's going, but it's a good question. I don't have a good answer.
Well, I've got one more question here for you to kind of wrap us up here. One of the reasons that I wanted to do this is I wanted a way to kind of pass on some lessons to the people who are going to come and replace us after a while, right? So
Are you
if
saying
there are people that are just starting to get into this business, or they're thinking about, oh yeah, events, that sounds really interesting, I'd love to do that. What kind of advice would you give to people who are thinking about a career in events, or are just starting their career in events?
I would say, well, I truly believe that if you do things that you love, you will end up in the right job. If you just do that, somehow it kind of manifests into what you really want to do. But if you know already you really want to get into events, I would do those. I mean, I would try to volunteer or intern or study or whatever it takes to learn about all the different positions. Because also there's like a lot of different roles in sport presentation. You could be a producer or show caller, like if you are able to make quick decisions, and you can write scripts well, and you can, you have technology knowledge, technical knowledge, as well as like if you're creative, so there's a lot of different areas. For me, I wish if I could go back and do anything as a kid, I would have learned as many languages as possible. So I would say if you want to do events that are worldwide, you should definitely like learn as much language as you can, because you never know where you're going. And also that opens up, the horizon a bit more. You're not just going to work in the US or work wherever your language is. So I would do that. And yeah, just get out there, get a hold of people. And there's so many people that, want to do this, and they'll write to me, and I'll be like, okay, I don't have anything right now, but I do keep a database, and I go, well, we just did the Warrior Games in San Diego, for instance, and a friend of my daughter's had just graduated San Diego State, and she's dying to get into this business. And then I was like, oh, wait, hey, we're in San Diego. We have this position open, and we brought her in, and now she's full on in to working events. So you just never know. If you just do what you really love, and somehow you'll get there, I think.
I think that's fantastic advice. And if I can gather from what you said throughout our conversation, one of the reasons that you've been able to do what you've done is when opportunities were just presented to you, they just kind of came. You said, "Sure, I'll do that." And yeah. I think this industry, it will welcome people who are okay to try to solve a problem, even if they don't necessarily feel like, I don't have any experience in that area, but yeah, I'll do that. Like you said, you started out on MTV, you were just doing all kinds of jobs. So yeah. I'm gathering from what you've said in your own experience that, having this ability to say yes to opportunities and not shy away from them, even if you maybe don't feel like, oh, maybe I'm not the perfect person for this, but there's a need, and I'll try to fill it.
Yeah, there's been, I can't really think of any like definitive examples right now, but there's been things that, were not the best job that I did. And then somehow later on, it was really good that I had that experience, because maybe it was like, I just was thinking of this the other day, something happened. I did something in LA, and, it was like a 2-day event. It was when I was doing broadcast. I don't even remember like what it was now, but then something came back around, and I'm like, oh yeah, I've been there. I've worked at that venue before, or I did this. So it always, even if, it's not the best gig in the world, or you don't have the most fun, or maybe it was just like, I don't know, 24 hours a day and it was horrible. Somehow that experience, I find, always comes back around, and I learned something from it. So I think it's good to just get out there, do as much as you can.
Well, I know you're in high demand, and I know you've got to run the meetings, and I've kept you beyond your time. So I appreciate your patience in answering all of my crazy questions. But if people are listening or watching this podcast, they want to learn more about sport presentation, they are running events, and they want to see if you are available or your company's available to provide some services, what's the best way for those folks to reach out and connect with you?
Yeah, well, the company is Van Wagner. I work for Van Wagner now. I've worked with them for a long time, and then after 2016, I joined them. So now I'm in charge of our international events division for them. So vanwagner.com is our company website. For me, I'm on LinkedIn. You can also direct message me on Instagram. I won't put my email out there because I already have like 6,000 unread emails. So you can find me there. Also on Facebook, but I don't know, Facebook isn't cool anymore. So I don't know if anybody goes there, but yeah.
Yeah, well, people my age or my mother's age, will go on there. But yeah, I understand you on that one. Okay, Christy, we'll let you get back to work, get your meetings ready. We wish you the best of luck in your preparations for the Santiago 2023 Pan American Games, Parapan Games. Super exciting for you. Thank you so much for joining us. Listeners and viewers, please like and subscribe to our podcast, and we'll catch you again soon. Christy, thank you so much.
Thanks, Christian.